Hi there, Molly. Good morning to
Hello.
you.
Good morning
Good
or good
morning. Good
evening.
morning. Oh,
wherever-
good evening for us here. Yes, it's almost 7 o'clock, 7:15 or so. Yes. Anyway, so I just want to introduce myself first. The company I work for. I'm Nadia from ZenOnco.io and Love Heals Cancer. We guide cancer patients on adopting an integrative oncology treatment approach. We help them find the right balance between mainstream treatment and complementary treatment approaches. And we help patients with our team of oncologists, nutritionists, healthcare experts. Everybody comes together on this platform to give as much as they can for cancer, right? And the best outcome for the patient is sought after, right? So we also help in connecting patients with other cancer warriors like yourself. I wouldn't even call you a survivor. You're a warrior out there. So who have gone through this journey and address all of their queries, and we would love to hear what they have to say. We would love to hear those inspirational stories, the journeys that y'all have been through, because nothing else would motivate us than to hear it from the horse's mouth. So I'm leaving the podium to you. You can take it further, ma'am.
Sure. Yeah, I found the same thing. I love my medical team because they're wonderful. They'll answer every medical question I have and give me any feedback, but there's nothing quite like having another patient's perspective because there's
Right.
nothing quite like knowing what to expect because
Of course.
as much as your medical team knows, they don't necessarily know what it's like to feel um, what cancer feels like, what this treatment feels like, what chemo feels like, what radiation feels like, seizures. I have brain cancer, and I didn't know anything about it before my diagnosis, and it was quite startling. You're
To
just
them, you're just another patient, I guess. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I'm lucky because my team is just so interactive. I feel like I have a family which is bizarre because most cancer patients I know don't have that same
That is amazing.
feeling. It's like for
That
me, I
is
have a
amazing.
family that I am so lucky to be able to rely on. It's in Henry Ford Hospital in
Detroit.
Detroit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love them like family, but you still they can tell you what they know, they can give you some feedback, but they don't know what it's like to actually be in that place. So I got active right away, wanting to know. I went to cancer support meetings at the hospital,
Hmm.
but I also got involved with something very similar to it sounds like what you guys have, which is Immerman Angels.
Right.
Um,
Right. Yeah.
and so I quickly got involved, so which they matched me with someone approximately my age, general region, same general region of the brain, same type of tumor, because you know, like I have anaplastic astrocytoma. That's
Hmm.
not the same as having ependymoma, and it's not the same as having even glioblastoma. I mean, it's pretty close to a glioblastoma,
Yeah,
but
but
it's
it's
not
not it.
there yet.
It's not it. Yeah.
Yes, not yet, not yet.
I
Um,
like how you put that.
not yet. Soon, maybe. Um, but it's funny how from Immerman Angels, I got involved on their board, and then I got involved with Henry Ford's involved with Head for the Cure, those 5K races that support money and um, support the hospitals that do a lot of research and whatnot. I do those. I support those. I'm a ambassador for that organization, and then I get involved with the Gilda's clubs here, and then I get involved with the NBTS and their trips to Washington D.C. to talk to congressmen, and I got involved with I think the American Brain Tumor Association in Chicago. And
Right.
you meet so many people, so like I remember getting diagnosed and I didn't know anyone, and then all of a sudden I feel like brain cancer is just the most popular cancer out there, which we all know is not true. It's pretty rare.
I
But
get
to
what
me,
you're
I feel like
I I
there's like
get
a
what.
thousand of those
Oh
people,
yeah.
a billion of those people, but there's really not that many. But I feel like I know everyone. So it's a really cool club, except nobody wants to be in it.
Okay, you can say that. Hmm.
So, yeah. When I was first diagnosed, though, like I thought, I mean, I was healthy, you know, that was the hardest thing. It's a really hard thing. Like, I thought I was one of those jerky people like that thought that, oh, well, you won't get cancer if you're healthy. If you eat right and you exercise, you're not going to get cancer. I thought I was too good to get cancer.
I mean, haven't we all been there where life just proves you wrong? It just
Yeah. Well, I
proves you
didn't
wrong.
know. There's certain in certain generational groups, like my family, that I'm the youngest in my family by a lot. Like, I was a whoops. My family thought they were done. Their kids were almost off to college. I was not even 1 year old when my sister graduated from high school, was on to college. My oldest sister. I came along. My parents were older. Most people in their generation and older, like, they don't talk about illness. They don't. So I
There's
didn't
a
know I had.
stigma. There's a stigma attached to
Yeah,
it.
they don't talk about it. And I had no idea that I had like a direct family line that had brain tumors, which I know they're saying isn't necessarily like a genetic thing with some exceptions, but they will ask me, and I'm like, well, it turns out I haven't. My dad's mom had a brain tumor. Her sister had a brain tumor. Their nephew had glioblastoma. And we don't know how far back, because I'm sure generations ago, people didn't even know they had brain tumors until they were crashing their car or falling off a bench or something.
Yeah.
But I had symptoms. They think mine was very slow growing and progressed slowly over time, which allows me to be as chatty as I am. And my brain has made substitutions that is very uncommon, um, just because most tumors, like if you have GBM, it's moving fast. So a lot of people who have a tumor in the general region mine was, they're having major aphasia, have struggle talking and finding words, bad memory. I do have a lot of those problems, but they're much more subtle.
Yeah.
And the aphasia doesn't really show up until I'm overtired. And I find good word substitutions most of the time. But they say it's because it was so slow moving over time that my brain actually moves stuff to the other side of the brain. So my tumor, do you want me to talk about how I was diagnosed? Because I don't
Yes,
know if they.
please. Yes,
Sure.
yes,
Okay.
please.
So I'm used to telling everyone. Otherwise I'll ramble for
No,
an hour.
you can go all out. You can just go all
Okay.
out. I'm here to listen to you. This is the
Awesome.
reason why we're having this conversation, is here to listen to you.
Awesome. Well, I'll tell you my diagnosis. I feel like that's pretty important too.
Yeah.
I have a pretty good wheel on that. In December 20, not December, no, there we go, making stuff up. In July 2016, I went to the gym. I went to work. I went on my lunch break. I walked to my lunch break. I'd get coffee and I chat with the baristas. And I suddenly felt nauseous, which is weird because I don't feel nauseous I don't get sick very often. So I just felt really weird. And I put my head down like that on the counter. The next thing I know, I'm on the floor. And there's EMS, and I have someone's shirt under my head. Okay. It was weird too, because people were still drinking coffee and chatting and having their meetings right around me, but I'm on the floor with EMS asking me questions. I was really embarrassed. I thought I fainted. I thought I tend to overcaffeinate myself a lot. And I just figured I was dehydrated and maybe overcaffeinated, and I fainted.
Okay.
So I was embarrassed. I got up, felt I hit my head, so I had a concussion. But I didn't know that then. I just knew I wanted to get back to work because I didn't want my office to worry. I was embarrassed, and they're like, "Nope, you have to go. You have to go to the hospital. You either had a stroke or a seizure, and we have to have you checked out." And I was like laughing. I was like, "This is ridiculous. I just fainted."
You were laughing?
Well, no, I didn't faint. It was a seizure. And they found a brain tumor, and you'd think that would be more. I think it was actually a blessing to be kind of out of it and have a concussion, because I wasn't as shocked or horrified as I thought I would be. But I just remember that EMS doctor coming up to me and very somberly, because they don't know what that was, and they knew it was a tumor, but it could have been GBM, it could have been, and I might have needed an emergency surgery. I'm glad I didn't have emergency surgery. It's not the hospital I would have wanted to have my surgery. Not that it's a bad hospital. It's not known for its brain
Preference.
surgery.
Yeah.
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 So they were worried that I needed an emergency surgery, but after doing that MRI, they determined it wasn't on anything, pressing. It wasn't doing anything too crazy. I needed a surgery soon, but I didn't need it like that day. So I got to shop around, and then I did a lot of testing because I'm left-handed, and my tumor is in my left temporal lobe, and it's in my deep left temporal lobe too. So that changes things a little bit more. And I had such a great surgeon. I had a lot of tests. I had some tests that are actually most people I know don't have to get it. Epilepsy patients get the WADA test. I know, and I had that test. I only know one other person who's had a WADA. I thought it was fun. I would do it again if it weren't, such a high risk for stroke. I would do it again because they shut off one side of your brain, ask you questions. They shut off the other side of the brain, ask you questions. And I had a good old time. I thought that was fun. I had neuropsych exams. I was hoping they'd find out I was like a secret genius, but because they do your IQ, I'm not. They were very excited to tell me before my craniotomy, and then last year I had it done again just out of curiosity because I wanted to know how my brain has changed. And I still have a perfectly average IQ, and they were excited to tell me that. I was sad, but I guess I should be happy. But yeah, so that was July 2016 when I found out I had a brain tumor, and I had brain surgery. I had my craniotomy in October 2016. So I had some time. I had a great surgeon in Detroit. She's amazing. And you don't hear a lot about female surgeons. It's a big deal. She is amazing. The temporal lobe is her specialty. She deals a lot with epilepsy patients too.
Rightly fell into her arms.
I just love her. She was amazing, and she's great. And my surgery went really well. I recovered really quickly. But they don't tell you, because they don't know immediately. So they take this, and they removed as much as possible. Obviously, with brain tumors, they can't remove, like with brain cancer and specifically tumors, yes, but most of the time I think. But cancer, like with mine, it has tendrils, so they can't just swoop it all out. They can say we got most of it and 99%, but with mine it wasn't even like that. It was probably close to that, like second best, because I didn't want to lose all my speech, and I didn't want to lose my memory. You don't want to dig.
Nobody wants that. Nobody wants
best quality of life. That's what you want.
Exactly.
So it was a successful surgery. I healed really well. She told me, I remember her telling me right after surgery, she's like, you're going to have some, it's weird they would even know this. She's like, you're going to have problem with names. And she warned me, and I just thought that was crazy. I can't remember any new names right away. They have to become long-term memory before I can remember a name.
Okay.
Or if I've gone too long without using a name or remembering a name, even if it's someone I've known since birth, I won't remember it.
Yeah.
So it was about 10 to 12 or days later, maybe it was 2 weeks. I don't know. I was hoping I would know right away. I thought I didn't understand, and I think it's pretty common to not understand that a glioma is not specific. I knew I had a glioma. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be fine. I'm sure it's a benign. I just assumed it was a benign tumor because surely cancer is really bad and you'd know it. I was diagnosed with anaplastic astrocytoma, which is a grade 3, or a junior glioblastoma. I always call it a junior glioblastoma because people have at least heard of a glioblastoma most of the time. And the funny thing is, my whole life I was a hypochondriac. I thought I always had something. I was always trying to take a med. I was on Benadryl, and probably why I had a brain tumor to begin with. My mom had me on Benadryl most of my life. I probably had brain cancer because of Benadryl. I don't know that that's a thing or not, but I know you're not supposed to have as much Benadryl as I took I think it's because I talked so much as a child, and my mom was older and tired, and she just wanted to shut me up. So she put me to sleep with Benadryl. But my whole life I was a hypochondriac, and I never had anything wrong with me. I never once suspected brain cancer. Never once. Anything but brain cancer. And I remember thinking, this is about 10 years ago, the worst thing I could imagine, because I had another cousin on another side of the family who was at 6 years old, passed away from medulloblastoma. I think that's what he had. He was 5 years old, medulloblastoma, I think. I could be wrong. It's one of the blastomas in the brain.
Yeah.
And I remember him passing away and being like, I cannot imagine anything more awful than brain cancer. Well,
look at
I
you.
felt fine. I felt fine, and I have it now. I'm like,
look at you.
I know, I'm laughing now because even my treatment, even people with less severe cancers, which sounds horrible because all cancers are horrible, but and that's another thing people don't. I know I didn't understand grading versus staging. Because sometimes people will be like, I have a stage 4 brain cancer, glioblastoma. I'm like, no, you don't have a stage 4. Stage 4 is completely different. It's like, I love telling people, like, it's not 100% all the time, but brain cancers can't go down, but other cancers can go up. Granted, if you have a brain cancer, like back here, that can travel down, but it's not as common. It's not like common. So grading versus staging was a big thing to learn.
It's a rare situation.
And I remember getting my diagnosis. I love my neuro-oncologist. He's amazing, and he's a year younger than me, which was the first time I had a doctor that was younger than me, and that blew my mind. I was like, this isn't weird. We also used to nickname him the hot doctor. He's married and has children, and I have a long-term, all of us are in happy relationships. Just that a lot of us have name problems too with memory. So you'd be like, the hot doctor. I have the hot doctor.
You remember.
I unfortunately too, the way I remember people with names, if I can't remember their names, I remember them by the most politically incorrect way of having to remember people. I'll be like the guy with the stutter. I'll remember people, or the guy with the hunched over stutter and the cane. I'm like, I'm sure that's not how he wants to be remembered, but that's But when he called me about 2 weeks after my surgery, and that was the first time I met him. And it's like, well, you have an anaplastic astrocytoma, which is a grade 3, and I just didn't know what any of that meant. I just knew it was bad because I didn't. I think they kind of have some idea, but they're not going to tell you ahead of time to panic you before you have to heal from surgery. I know you probably will heal better if you just don't have that extra anxiety and worry. So if you think you're going to be fine and you'll do well with your surgery, But I think
the mind plays a very important role.
Yeah, so they didn't want to tell you and plus they don't want to be wrong. What if they tell you, oh, we think you have a really low grade tumor, and we think we'll be able to get it all, and if they tell you all that stuff right away, and then they find out, oh boy, it's GBM, and we're sorry for telling you.
Yeah, we gave our wrong information.
You don't want to get someone's hopes up or hopes down in advance. I didn't know what any of that meant. I was so scared because I didn't think I would have to do chemo or radiation. I just assumed I'd be fine and I wouldn't have to deal with any of that stuff. And I remember asking him, he's like, you can come by the hospital, one of the other offices, you can come to West Bloomfield and I'll talk to you and I'll tell you, just, make sure you have, I couldn't drive because of the seizures. It's like, I'm here all day, come by anytime and I will tell you. And I go, okay, well, I'm going to hang up now. I hung up the phone. My mom was sitting in the car in the driveway because we were about to go out for lunch when he called. And I was like, hold on, Mom, I got to take this call. My poor mom, she's was in her late 70s then at that point, and she's sitting in the car. And after hanging up the phone with him, I get out on the porch and I just started screaming, which is not a me thing. I just started screaming. And she was so startled, she couldn't drive. We had to call my boyfriend home from work to drive us all, which is great because he listens and understands things me and my mom were a little too panicked at that point.
Yeah.
Um,
I can imagine. I can only imagine.
that was a horrible, like, life-changing kind of moment. But I was okay after that diagnosis. Like, I was okay. I actually had a really interesting story way back. My mind is always doing, like, jumping all over. But
please be my guest.
when I found out I had a brain tumor, and I'm in that MRI machine that first time, before we knew what kind of brain tumor was in there, before we knew anything. But the day I had the seizure and fell off the bar stool, and I had to wait, like that 12 hours to get in that MRI. I'm in that MRI machine for the first time in my life, and I'm kind of in and out of it because of the concussion. But I remember having this very spiritual moment. I'm not a very religious person. I'm not someone who believes, but I'm not someone who doesn't believe. I'm sort of like, I was raised Roman Catholic, but I'm just sort of floating about, right?
Yeah.
But I remember being in that MRI machine, and I felt this very otherworldly sort of experience, which was, you have a path. Like, you can pick it. It goes like this, right now, your life right now. Neither is right and neither is wrong, but you have choices. You can go this way or you can go this way. And the one way is understandable to panic and freak out and be unhappy, because I had been struggling with a lot of depression and like feeling like a failure at a lot of different parts of my life. Married, divorced, in my 20s, debt, bad jobs, unhappiness. I just felt like that a lot. But then the other side was, well, you embrace it, because you're not going to get rid of this tumor just with positive thinking or negative thinking, and nothing. It's not. You're going to have to deal with this regardless, but you do have a choice. You can choose to embrace it and move with it and make it yours. Like, it's really time for you to, like, choose how you're going to take your life. And
take it as it comes. Take it as it comes.
Yeah.
One day at a time.
Embrace it. It's weird to embrace a cancer. Like, that sounds stupid, but it's like, it's in me. We might as well be buddies if we have to deal with each other. I mean, I don't want to be its friend, but I mean, it's a roommate anyway. It lives in there.
Yeah.
So
that's a nice way to think about it.
I chose that route.
Yeah.
And I very consciously chose that, which doesn't mean it was an easy choice from there on out. Like, that moment screaming on the porch. I had a moment where you're like, okay, so after that moment, and after that diagnosis, the neuro-oncologist, he totally, like, helped so much. Like, he answered questions, he calmed me down. I didn't feel like I was at death's door right that minute, I'm someone who's always conscious of understanding that death is a part of life. I've always been like that. I was a weird little kid that was always into, like, stories, near-death experiences, and people who would, like, have their heart stop and come back. Like, I always just thought that was interesting as a kid. But even now, I'm like, okay, well, for me to be okay with my diagnosis means understanding that death is a thing that's going to happen, not necessarily from cancer, but at some point in everyone's life, it's something we're all going to do. So
yeah,
I just get myself at peace with that. And but I never felt like, after talking to my neuro-oncologist, I had a lot of hope and a lot of, like, like, I remember sometimes they'll tell people with a different grading of a tumor, like an oligodendroglioma, they'll be like, well, you have, like, the good one. And I'm like, okay, monsters. And then mine is like, well, yours isn't the best one, and it's not the worst one. It's kind of in the middle. And I'm like, well, it really, over time, it's sort of, you find out that grading and isn't really as important sometimes as location and operability and very general health, age. It sometimes it doesn't even matter. Like, some people will have a benign tumor in their brain. They're in a wheelchair, and I feel so. I'm like, it just doesn't seem fair. It's like it just does, and then you realize that life isn't fair anyway, and learning how to just be okay with you didn't deserve this, but it doesn't mean you can't roll with it either. I don't know. I had no purpose until I had brain cancer, and now I have all this purpose in the world. So it's hard to be. I'm lucky I feel fine, because a lot of people are like, oh, well, are you healed? Are you all better? I'm like, no. That's the hard thing to tell people is. So the brain is so interesting.
Look at you.
Yeah, like I'm
Right?
doing great.
Yeah, you do. You look at your attitude. Look at the way you just smiled at me, and the positivity just came through. I was looking at you, and I'm like, oh my God, she's so full of positivity already. I was looking at, like, okay, I went through your pictures on Facebook, and I was like, okay, so this is the person I'm going to be interviewing. Okay, and then I see you, and then you're smiling.
That's the weirdest thing. It's hard, and it's been taking things in perspective has really changed for me. Like, which is not to say I have bad days a lot, and I'm a grumpy person. I'm
Mm.
whiny. I'm the baby. I'm a spoiled brat. You know, like I'm still a grown child. I'm like, I'll be 40 next month, and yet I feel like I'm about 22 years old. I still try to talk to my nieces and my nephew in college. Like, I think that I'm closer in age to them than their parents, and that's not true. But emotionally, I feel like I'm still at that level, like where I'm still a kid.
I get what you're
I've,
saying.
but I've had a lot of like bad stuff happen, and after my diagnosis, less than a year later, my mom was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer,
Oh,
and then
okay.
she passed away. And then her sister, shortly after my mom was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, her sister was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, my aunt.
Hmm.
They both passed away within.
For that.
My aunt qualified for the Whipple,
Hmm.
which was a successful surgery, but once you get to a certain age and maybe your health isn't so great, I don't know that I would. I mean, that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But sometimes, and here, I think in the U.S. too, we're just so eager to want to like try to fix, and it's like sometimes just accepting and you know, like making that choice without putting the think more about that quality of life. But some people will do great with that Whipple. I know a lot of people actually who do. You know, younger people do tend to do pretty well with it. It's just losing. I mean, my mom was the person I was closest to in my family, and she was always taking care of me and always sort of like the person I looked up to or asked for advice and needed help with. And suddenly we're sick together. So we, you know, she was doing chemo, I was doing chemo. We were at the same hospital. She lost a lot of weight. I got really heavy from all the steroids I was on. So we had some funny pictures. We both were going through it. And, you know, we talked a lot about, you know, what comes next. You know, it was an interesting time. It just seemed like a lot of bad stuff. If you look at things from the wrong or from a different perspective, it was a devastating time.
Yeah.
But I don't choose to look at it like that. We're all. I don't know.
I mean, she's. If you ask me, I'll say she's raised you up that way.
She did. She was always quirky, and she was okay. Like I remember as a small child, maybe 9 or 10 years old, I used to ride my bicycle everywhere, and I loved reading. Reading, I was a big dork. Not one of the cool kids, and I was a little kid that would ride my bike to the library to read books, and not normal books. Like I read normal books too because I liked reading. I read like little kid books and mysteries and ghost books. But I also there was one time I rode my bike to the library and I wanted to take out about 6 books on near-death experiences. This is like a 10-year-old taking a bunch of books out on near-death experiences from like the sciencey aisle. I don't know.
And curious. The lady at the You're desk, just curious.
I did. I had always been curious, and the librarians they think they thought I wanted to hurt myself or was suicidal, you know. So she called my mom. She says, I'm a kid, and she called. She's like, "Is it okay that your daughter is getting all these books on like death and dying and near-death experiences? Is this okay?" My mom's like, "She's reading, isn't she?" like it's fine. She's always been interested in that stuff. Yes, so they did have to call my mom to make sure that it was okay that I was reading what I was reading. But yeah, always been into that kind of stuff.
But if you ask me again, I'm sorry.
Don't worry.
If you ask me again, I would say that it takes a lot to have to see your mom as well as yourself be in the same hospital, go through the same thing again and again and again.
And well, the weird thing is that at that moment, I was like, I knew that she,
Mm.
knowing what I know now,
Right.
she was scared for the first time in her life. She would never admit it,
Hmm.
but she also knew that she felt terrible. She didn't really. She used to be the person who could listen at the doctor's office, and used to be the one with the questions. And I think she was even at nursing school or wanted to be in nursing school in the '60s, the 1960s. And she didn't because of she had family and my dad and whatnot. But she was always the person who was like on top of things, taking notes. But at that part of her life, she was just starting, she's getting up in age, and she was starting, her health was failing, and she didn't really want to know. And that was, she didn't really want to know, and neither did her sister, much about their diagnosis. They didn't know, didn't want to know. It was pretty clear once that when she wasn't qualifying for the Whipple surgery, that meant that she had Mets, which meant that it was for her, it was in her liver. They weren't going to do it, not because she didn't need it or whatever, but because it wasn't a good prognosis. She was going to die. But she didn't ask any of that stuff. I'm kind of glad she didn't. I just wish I had knew, like, they both, I think, had blood clots in their, and they just were, that's one thing about that cancer, it's just the pain that people are in so much pain, but are kind of accustomed to it. So they don't know one pain from the next pain. What's a blood clot pain from a normal pain that you feel every day? And when you're on such high anti-pain, or like pain meds, that you don't even know the difference. I don't know, but
It makes
I
sense.
just
It
felt,
makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, it's super, super interesting in any case that I suddenly was like, well, I want to cheer her up, as opposed to always needing my mom to make me feel better when I would have like horrible pain, which I only had horrible pain when we found out. We found out a few minutes. So with my brain tumor, they kind of treat it like it's an aggressive glioblastoma, even though it's a lower grade, because they want to kind of nip it in the bud. They treat it real aggressively. So I had max radiation.
Hmm.
They gave me a little bit of my chemo. So I took Temodar and had my radiation, and then I had a little break to recover from that, and then I did a year of Temodar, which is the pill form of the chemo.
Chemo in
Which is weird.
itself is such a rough experience. I can only imagine what this would have been.
Well, and the weird thing is I thought it was all going to be so much worse.
Mm.
And it really, I thought the radiation ultimately, like, probably made me feel the worst short term.
Yeah.
And then the chemo over the course of a year. It's funny because it's not just that first dose, and it's not for me, it was 5 days every month, 5 days every month of these chemos. And it took me a few months to even realize that you don't feel the pain, like you don't feel icky right away. Like it would be on the day after I was done with my chemo that I would feel the worst, those like 2 or 3 days after. But it turned out I was allergic to it. So I actually had to go, but I didn't know that.
You were allergic to
the Temodar, the temozolomide. So a few months in, I used to go to my mom's house and like leave our house here, and because I just needed someone to kind of take care of me, because I would feel like, I felt really like when I would take the pills, I would like be in so much pain for just like maybe 10 minutes. It would be in like excruciating pain, which I'm not used to pain. I'm a big baby anyway, but it would be like such excruciating pain where like my mom would just kind of like hold on to me for like 10, I could be standing, it'd be fine, but just be excruciating. And then it would go away. And then I would have like a fever, but it would go away. And then I would have chills and it would go away. But it would be like, I'd like bundle myself up, and then kind of like if you have a fever or a flu, and then you throw all your clothes off because you're sweating. That would be me for like the first day, and then I'd be fine. But I just thought that was what everybody went through. I didn't expect chemo to be, and it wasn't that bad, because it was quick, that feeling. But then by the third or fourth month, I love these apps we have here now, which like the MyChart app, where I can talk to my doctors, I can send them emails, ask questions, see my temperature, see all this stuff, whatever. see my brain, see like anything. Like I can just look at it. But I remember that's how I would talk to my nurses. And I remember laughing. I go, look, I found a hive on my arm. It looks like a heart. And I took a picture of the heart on my like arm and I sent it to them. They're like, that's not normal. When did this show up? I'm like, oh, like the day after, chemo. She's like, okay, how long have you been getting this? I'm like, she's like, did you take Benadryl? Did it help? I'm like, no, I took Benadryl. Like I took Benadryl after they told me to. They're like, do you have a temperature? I'm like, no. But it turned out I did have an allergy to the chemo, so I had to do a new protocol, which I still took the chemo, but I had to do a slow dosing, and very rare. Most people don't have to do that. I don't think, what do I know? It might have been fine over time, but I had to do it. So my protocol was a little different than your normal Astro 3 Hamidar person.
Okay.
But it was still the same chemo. I just had so the first 3 days of every cycle from there on out, I would go to the hospital like every other cancer patient, and I would take I still didn't get it like injected like other cancer patients, but I'd be the first one in the cancer ward, the last one out, because I'd be there for like 8 hours, and they would, so every half hour I'd get a little more.
Okay.
They put a drop on my tongue, and then a half hour later, 2 drops on my tongue, half hour later, 3 drops on my drug, then a half an hour later, a tablespoon, half an hour later, half a
it
cup,
just kept on going like that.
As opposed to just taking the 2 pills. I would
straight away.
Yeah. They would just slow dose it, and then by the 4th day, I could just take the pills. And then for the last few months, I still had to slow dose it, but it was in pill format. So I would take 1 pill at 8 in the morning, 1 pill at 8:30, and then I would do that till about 1 p.m. or something like that. I don't remember, but it was just. But I didn't feel that bad. But compared to what my mom was going through, I would try to have to be brave for her. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, chemo, that's no fun, but. And it isn't, but it wasn't as bad as I felt like what she was going through.
I understand. I really do.
It made me have to be a little bit braver and have to be a bit of a grown-up for the first time in my life. And from then on out, I like, again, you could look at it as the worst couple years of your life, or all these people I get to meet and help, which I never got to do before. I didn't have just like a lost animal. That's what I felt like. I have a great boyfriend. I've had him for over 10 years now. But
wow.
But I still didn't like my job, which is her family business. I worked at it. I just didn't like it. Working for your own father is difficult anyway. Everyone thinks there's some kind of great benefit to working for your father. Like, oh, you must get such great vacation time and great pay. No. You get minimum wage. You don't get vacation time. He goes, and you're in charge. But you don't get paid like you're some kind of VP or anything. No, you just, and if you take a day off, you get your dad going, well, why? But it's an optical business.
Yeah.
Selling lenses. It's not my dream come true. And I just fell into it after my own life disasters in my 20s. So I just slid into it. I used to live in Los Angeles. I used to kind of try to do things I love. But, various bad choices led me back home, which is better. I'm happy here now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's my neighbor. Never mind. I thought it was my boyfriend saying, you're talking too loud.
But I love the fact that you come back home and you're building up your life in such a different way. It's such an inspiration. Because if you ask me, you've been going through this journey. You've been doing whatever you have to do. You had a certain lifestyle before it. You had a certain lifestyle while going through it. And now you're having a certain lifestyle after it.
I'm much I constantly try to remind myself that, and people sometimes get a little uncomfortable, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. I love when people ask me questions about diagnosis, but I will full out tell them, we expect it to return. It will return. I can hope that it won't, but I don't even pray. I don't pray to God to cure me, because that would be just to me, that's unfair for all the other millions of people who have it. Just
Right.
help me get through this. Help me do the best I can, and be brave and be strong and help people. But I don't think I remember people, I would get involved in various give talks or whatever in various groups, and some people come out, I'm praying for you, and I'm like, thank you, I feel like
I mean, that's their
the
way of being gracious
being up to,
towards you.
and I remember telling, like, like, I feel like it's all right that this happened to me and not someone else. I'm okay. I'm kind of grateful because I'm
I
happier
was
now.
just coming to that. I was just coming towards gratitude. And there you brought it. You just brought it.
I'm happy because I feel well. It's easy right now because I feel well. I'm actually lifting heavier weights now than I was before my diagnosis. I am, because of the location in my brain. That's what a lot of people have a hard time with. Brains are weird. They're interesting. Every just by an inch can make a world of difference. Here, there.
Everywhere. Yeah.
My physical mobility is not at all. Like I don't I actually I tried to. I was training for a half marathon during my chemo. I
Wow.
decided I was doing a half marathon, and I decided not to run it because I'm in Metro Detroit. The race was in, I think, October. Is it October they usually do it? And it was cold and rainy, and I was not feeling super either, so I was like, maybe not the best day to run, so I didn't run it, but I had been training.
Okay.
So I even now, like we're all kind of stuck at home because of the COVID.
Yeah, same
which
here,
is
same
fine.
here.
I don't lock myself in the house. I still go on long walks. Which I remember being a bit of a snob, thinking it doesn't count if I'm walking. I have to run it. Well, guess what? I'm in better shape now and going on long walks than I was running.
I completely understand because I'm a runner myself. So.
And even now, but the thing is because I'm so active, I do high intensity interval training with like boot camp classes. I don't do it as much because I like lifting and doing a lot of strength training.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize I could do a lot of that from my own basement. My boyfriend just sent me a note, so I'm like reading it. He's telling me about the dog's butt. So that one dog is licking the other dog's butt. Okay. So I have to deal with that. But other than
he is also a dog person.
He is, and he's working at home, which is interesting. But we're all, everything's changing right now for everyone, and I feel like as a cancer patient, it's kind of my responsibility right now to know, like, kind of realize that a lot of people are kind of coming into this hard change of like, wait, what? Everyone wants everything to go back to normal, and it's like, I don't think things are ever going to be normal for you in the same way they were before again, and that's okay. And that's a hard thing for people. It's okay. We always have to change and evolve with time anyway. So that's kind of where I am even with COVID.
Yeah, the COVID just catalysted the whole thing, if you ask me.
Yeah. And it's like people just want to get angry and blame everyone and it's like silly. It's like there's always going to be something coming along. I mean, and I can see myself been panicking too, but it's like you still got to live your life. Just be cautious and do what you can to take care of yourself and be healthy. But as a cancer patient, like when you my lymphocytes would always get really low to the point where I would have a delay in my chemo. And you don't really want you to go out in crowds or being around because you're susceptible. But I still went out and did things. I still would meet up a friend for coffee. Just got to be more careful than your average person. So it's interesting.
And it's really I feel like how your family has supported you in every way. Like, I mean, the caregivers, not just at the hospital, but at home.
That's
the support system is just 100%.
I would say my sisters live on the West Coast, so they would fly in every now and then. They weren't there for my surgery. My mom was there. My dad worked. He's a little bit more which is weird because you always want to think that men are the strongest, but
yeah.
they handle things differently. My boyfriend was amazing, and he still is. Like, he knows more about some things than he'll go to my doctor's appointment and memorize things, whereas I don't. I'll think I heard something. He's like, no, that's not like. But
I
yeah, my
mean,
dad isn't. They're supportive in their own ways. Like my family can't. They had their own kids on the West Coast. They would fly out when they could.
yeah.
They're supportive in their own ways. My one of my sisters is really into holistic dieting and holistic foods, but she won't got into that because I think it's that feeling of being out of control with my health, my mom's health, my aunt's health, and watching this whole thing happen. So people were like try to cope in their own way, so control what they can. So she's
Hmm.
more into like holistic things. So I'm always like, hey, what's this? What do you think, turmeric or this? You know, she's like turmeric for
Yeah.
X, Y, and Z. I mean, I wouldn't use it as an alternative to my treatment, but
Hmm.
in addition to, you know,
Hmm.
um,
The whole, what do you think this entire journey has taught you? Like, how much has it changed your life? That we heard, we know, but what are the lessons you're going to take from it?
the
What would you
the
like?
lessons I would take away from this is, well, don't like live your life right now and enjoy it. Like love it, even if it's. I mean, it's easy for me to say when things are good, but even when things are bad. So one thing I started doing, which is weird because I was raised Roman Catholic, but I'm not a particularly religious. But I do believe in something, and I believe it's something bigger than me. Only because I feel it, and I just started saying every night, starting from my diagnosis on, I would just say, even if it was a bad day, I'd say, "Thank you, God, for today. Thank you for today."
Exactly.
And I would just say that every single night, and I still do it now.
Yeah.
And even on the days even on the day my mom died, like it's but it becomes a part of me, and it's just how I go with my thinking. You
I
know,
mean,
like
that's the way you cope. That's what I would say. It's the way
that,
you.
it's the way I cope, but it like seems to help in a really deep
Yeah.
way. Like I still have negative feelings. I still am scared all the time. I'm terrified of my expected reoccurrence, but I'm also like, okay, feel it, feel the feeling. You're feeling the feeling it. But then after a while of this practice, you realize, well, okay, I'm feeling all the feeling. What am I gonna do with this now? There's no point. Like I'm feeling it. I felt it. Let's time to just do something else. And it's helped me a lot. It doesn't make things go away, but you just realize that there's only so much you can control. So
There's
control
only
what
so
you
much you
can,
can
which is
control. Yeah.
you can only control this immediate you. You know.
Yeah.
So if you're in charge of that, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
still there's so many people who can go through so much and come on. I'm never going to be a rock star or a hero in any other way, but I'm like, if there's one small thing I can be a rock star, like a superhero, I'm going to try to do it with this, you know, like you can help people.
Definitely, definitely being that. You're definitely being that because with the way you're going to inspire people with your journey, it's just, I don't know, so many people are going to take, you're not just going through it. You've gone through it, you've seen the other side, and now you're doing something with it. So,
So that's hard not to look at it as a gift in a really kind of weird way. And that's kind of how I've taken the thing. I'm lucky because a lot of people can't, and so I have to say because a lot of people can't who have what I have.
okay.
Due to location, they have other deficits, but they have other things that aren't problems, you know. But for the most part, I'm choosing to look at it as a gift because I can, and I'll roll with it. And I'm meeting so many awesome people. It's hard. I feel like I
That's
have
it.
a whole thing of friends and new people. Like I did. Hey, I just met you today, and that's awesome. I love meeting people.
Yeah. And the positivity is just, it's just contagious. Let me just say that.
Oh,
Your
good. That makes me
positivity
happy.
is very contagious. Your smile, especially. It is. I must say that. Yeah. Just wanted to know how was your first reaction when you got that report back saying that you were, I mean, not cancer free, but still you were,
Stable.
yeah.
do they
That is
call?
the
Well,
word.
I have been stable ever since. I don't know when they decide you're stable. Like, is it after the radiation, after the surgery, or after? But I have been stable. There's no changes visible at this time. It could happen at any time. They might see
Hmm.
a little new flare.
Hmm.
But I went from going every 3 months to get an MRI to now I'm extended to every 4 months, and I think from that I'll go to every 6 months.
Hmm. Okay.
Um, and it's weird too, like having been like kind of a bad athlete, but an athlete just the same. I played ice hockey and I played all the high school sports. I was good at tennis as a kid, but like always a little chunky, so like I always had that issue. Um,
Okay.
but like I had symptoms going back to probably when I was in college still. Like that's how slow moving. It might have even been there benign before that, but we really don't know. But I do know now what a seizure is not like in movies. In movies, you see a seizure and people are like doing that, shaking. No, I mean,
No, it's
yeah,
not.
that can happen. Grand mal seizures, but I know for a fact now that I had a seizure in 2006.
Hmm.
I know that I had a seizure in 2007. I had double vision for a hot minute in about 2009.
Okay.
I had major mood problems, like in personality kind of issues going on all during time from my college years in my early 20s. And
Hmm.
then it would go like be fine, but then there would be depression again. And I just thought it was me, like being like, oh, I'm just going through hard times, or it was just this breakup or that breakup,
It's an
or I just had
experience,
too
I
much.
feel. Such an
Yeah, like that's you.
experience. It's
Yes,
like,
it's really interesting, and I feel like if anyone ever is like randomly, I never fainted in my life. That I was fainting suddenly a lot in my late mid to late 20s, for like no reason.
I mean, what would
Maybe
your
but
words of
I
wisdom?
was always like trying to take some kind of diet pill or caffeine pills because like I always wanted to be leaner, without actually having to like
Do the
watch my
workout.
diet. I just
Yeah.
wanted to not be hungry, and I didn't work out as much in my 20s as I did in my 30s. Um,
Hmm.
and I just assumed it was always that kind of thing. I remember and I work in optical. That's the crazy thing. And I remember um, I was driving because I used to be on the road for work as kind of like a salesperson, and laughing, calling my ophthalmologist, laughing because I go, I have double vision. He's like, you need to come in here. That is not normal. He goes, that could be a brain tumor. I laughed at him.
He
And I
actually
go,
said
oh,
that?
yeah, he told me it could be a brain tumor. And I go, oh, well, I'm feeling better now. When's your, like, can I come see you next week? And by then, my symptom was gone. And I never had it
Hmm.
again. But it's just funny that I could have been dead. Granted,
These things
treatment,
happens. Yeah, these things
yeah, and
happen.
treatment hasn't changed a whole lot since then, and maybe only gotten a little better. The only thing is, I wonder is if I had my resection then, would it have been in a more operable region? Could they have removed more of it? But if they might have put me on the PCV form of treatment that but it's not worth thinking about. I also was in a really bad place mentally at that point, so probably
Anyway,
wouldn't have been the same
yeah.
perspective then.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Anyway.
it's about, yeah, sorry,
Hmm.
I'm over talking.
No, 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 you're not. You're not. I just, a sudden question came up. So then I just, okay, you go on.
I can't even remember what I was about to say. No worries.
Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to ask you, what are your words of wisdom to a person who's grappling with this right now? Say, for example, they're watching this and they want to say, oh my God, look at this person. She's become so much more than what the disease is. Like she's nailing it. If you ask me, what would you like to say to all of them out there watching this video?
Any new, sorry, the sound kind of dipped for me a little bit. So what would I say to anybody newly diagnosed, kind of a thing?
Yeah.
I would say, gosh,
Just
just
diagnosed, but they're not dealing with it well. They're
make
not.
sure, if they're not dealing with it well, I would say get involved in an organization where you can talk one-on-one with someone. Um, Not every group chat is going to be the right chat for you. I would say there's actually on Twitter too. There's a monthly chat, and that group actually helped me. It's not an organization. It's just a hashtag BTSM, which is brain tumor social media. And I would say they had the biggest impact because I'm really active on social media.
Mm.
And it's just people come in every Sunday, they're on the Pacific time, but it's a little late for me, but I do it. But if you just use that hashtag BTSM too, you can ask questions and people will answer it. But I remember those are the people that kind of got me involved. So try to meet people, but like if your hospital has a group, go to that. But sometimes those can be a little hard.
Mm.
But I say you find someone. Just find someone. Google, or not Google. I guess Googling your own diagnosis is like the worst idea ever when you're first diagnosed. Don't do that if you're not ready to read the worst possible thing. But I would say find someone or find a group. No matter what kind of group, like there's sounds like your group too. I don't know, or the Immerman Angels. Just find a group where like you could interact with someone who's been where you are.
Yeah, and that makes all the difference, doesn't it?
It really makes all the difference because from there on out, they can help you find more people. You don't feel alone. Not feeling alone is probably big because you're not alone. Even if when you have a rare cancer, you are not alone.
No, you're not. No, you're not. Thank you so much for this. I mean, it's been such a great pleasure talking to you. And again, that smile is contagious, I must say.
Thank you. You made me so happy watching your smile too. So.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor. It really has been an honor. Let me say that. Yeah.
Well, let me shoot me an email. You guys can shoot me an email or if you have any other questions or you need anything else, just give me a holler.
Yes, I will do that. I will do that. It's been a pleasure. Let me just say that first. And what you do, what you've been through, it is so inspiring for me. And I must say, the people who are going to watch this are going to be like, no, I want to be like her. I want to be like her.
And people can, even anyone who might watch us can feel free to message me or contact me on Facebook or Twitter, whatever, if they can find me.
Pretty soon with all of that. I will be sending you a mail pretty soon. Thank you so much, Molly.
Thank you
so much.
Have a good one.